Hello, in the previous tutorial, we learned how to grab text input from a user by using a text box and a submit button. So we used forms to ask the user to enter in their name, and it would display their name along with a personalized message on the screen. So that was using text or string input in a form. In this tutorial, we're going to look at using integer input and how to treat numbers that are entered into a text box in a form as an integer value rather than a string. So by default, when a user enters a value into a text box in a form on a web page, the value that they entered in will be treated as a string. So if we want to do some mathematical calculations or some logical operations, we need to actually tell JavaScript to treat whatever value has been entered as an integer and not as a string. So we're going to use the parseInt function to do that. And basically the parseInt function will pass a string argument and return an integer value. So it's going to treat a string as a value. So if you make a variable and you put a number into that variable, but you store it as a string. So for example, if you create a variable called number, and instead of putting number equals 35, you put number equals 35 in quotation marks, we can still come back to that later on and treat it as an actual integer. So at the moment, JavaScript is going to treat it as a string, but we can come back to this later on using the parseInt function and take this string and return it as an integer value. So that's an example there. Now, specifically, by using these quotation marks, we've specifically created this variable as a string. But when you create a form and you ask for input for a form, JavaScript will treat it as a string and not an integer. So in this example, we're just going to have a very simple math question on the screen. We're going to ask the user to enter in their answer, and it will display a message if it's correct. Otherwise, it will tell them to try again. So we created a variable here called answer, and the answer to the math question will be 15. So the question is going to be down here in this form, what is the answer to 10 plus 5? And then the form, it's got a little text label there that says enter your answer, and then a text box with an ID of attempt. So this text box is going to be called attempt. Then below the text box we have a button, and it's a submit button, and it has an on-click event which will basically run the function called guess. So when the user enters in their answer, and then as soon as they click on this submit button, it will run the guess function. Okay, and also there is a paragraph below the button with an ID of result, and initially the paragraph says enter your answer in the text box above. It must be a number only, but when they actually enter their answer and click on submit and the guess function runs, this result paragraph here will actually be replaced with a message saying that the answer is either correct or that they need to try again. So the guess function runs when they click on submit. If we scroll back up on line 12, here is the function. So function guess, and then we're using the attempt variable here. So we have attempt equals, because on line 10 we only initialized or created the variable attempt, but we didn't actually give it any value. So we've got attempt equals document.getElementById, and then we're grabbing the element by its ID, which is attempt. So that is the text box down here. So text box has the ID of attempt. So we're grabbing the text box and then we're getting its value. Okay, so it's important if you want to actually grab the number that they've entered in. So they might guess and they might put 15 in as their answer, or they might get it wrong. They might put 14 in as their answer. Or it will actually grab their answer from that text box, so it will grab the value. All right, so make sure at the end of this line, document.getElementById, and then the ID attempt, make sure that you also add dot value onto the end of that, so it actually grabs that value. On the next line, we then have attempt equals parseInt, and then attempt in brackets, so as the argument. So what this is doing is it's grabbing that value that's in the text box with the ID of attempt, but that value is actually a string value. Even though it's been entered by the user as a number, it's actually being treated by JavaScript as a string value. So we need to use the parseInt function to tell JavaScript that we actually want to treat that string value as an integer. So we want to pass a string argument, which is attempt, and return an integer value. Okay. Next line, we have a variable called result, which is equal to document.getElementById result. Okay, so that is this paragraph down here. All right. So it's grabbing that paragraph, and then there's a little if statement here. If attempt is equal to answer, so if the answer that they enter in the text box is equal to the actual answer of 15, then it will display the message correct. And it does that by grabbing this result paragraph element, and it replaces the inner HTML with the message correct. So the paragraph down here that says initially, it says enter your answer in the text box above, that will be replaced with the message correct if they get the answer correct. Otherwise, there's an else statement here, result.innerHTML equals try again. And that message will be displayed if they either answer the wrong, if they put the wrong answer in, so like 14 or 16, or if they type something in that's not a number. Okay, so that is how to use parseInt to treat a string as an integer, or to take a string argument and return an integer value, and also how to get the actual value from a text box, so to get a number that's been entered into a text box by the user. Okay, thanks for watching.